say that I have a fear of public speaking, so I am much more terrified standing here right now than I am with any virus. Put that out there. I'm gonna step down because that's even. Okay, so as Pastor Martin said, I am a public health expert. I'm a doctor of veterinary medicine. I've got a master of public health, and I've got a minor in epidemiology. So I know a little bit about this. I talk about it every day. I get about this scared about every day too. So I've been talking about this for weeks, and I'm still scared every time I have to look at somebody's faces and talk. So please bear with me. I'm nervous. All right. So I think we have a few slides to go through.
Pastor Alexander?
There we go. This is the first one. I want to talk about, and I'm going to try not to get too technical as I talk. If I do, just, if I see your eyes glazing in the back, glazing over, rolling up in the back of your head, I'll know if I got to back off. But I want to talk about morbidity and mortality first. Morbidity means the number of people who are exposed to the virus who actually get sick. Okay? That's a hard thing to calculate because right now we're seeing infection rates, and if you test positive, you're considered infected, right? But that exposure doesn't mean you're actually infected. So it's a hard number to calculate, but look at this number, and this is the number of actual cases. 81% of the cases are very mild, flu-like, and 13% and 5% critical. But that's the number of people who actually get sick, okay? Out of every 100 people who test positive for this virus, 84 of them never get sick. They never show any clinical signs, okay? So this is a breakdown of those 16 people out of 100 who actually get sick, okay? Mortality rate is the number of people who die. That is calculated by taking the number of people who actually get sick, test positive for the virus, actually get sick, and then, so you take the number of people who die and divide it by the number of people who actually get sick. So it's 3% of 16%, okay? It's not 3% of the population. People hear 3% of the people are dying, they assume that that's 3% of everybody. It's not, okay? It's just not, all right? I mean, just think about it. City of Wuhan, 11 million people. If that was 3%, it'd be, 300,000 people. We do not have 300,000 people who died in Wuhan, and the coronavirus in Wuhan right now is dying out. Similarly, I mean, South Korea is about, 3-4 weeks behind them, and I just looked at the epi curves this morning, and we're at the peak right now. So I expect South Korea to start falling off as well, okay? So, yeah, I think we'll go to the next slide now. So, further breakdown of that 3% mortality rate, if you look at age demographics across the population, I'm sure you all have been aware, 80 plus years of age, and you are much higher risk. I mean, it's exponential at each age group, right? So something to think about is, okay, who really is at risk of getting the virus as well as dying from the virus? The older population is definitely more at risk. Okay? And if there's questions, I am welcome to questions. If anybody has questions about these slides as we go through.
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
So help me break this down, because it looks like I didn't know, I misinterpreted some of the metrics. I thought, like a lot of people did, that if you apply, right now Italy's got a 6% death rate. I think China's 4% or 3%. If you take a conservative 2% death rate, you're not looking at overall infected population and subtracting 2% from that population. You're actually only going to get out of those. It's more of a waterfall chart, right? Does that make sense? So
Yes.
we go from, let's just say 20% Americans get infected, that's 70 million people, and then how do we break that down to morbidity and actual death rate?
Yes. How? Right now it's very hard because morbidity rate is an estimate because we all have all these people that tested positive, right? Well, how many were actually exposed? I mean, the people that tested negative are also exposed, right? But they're not necessarily captured in those numbers. So usually morbidity rates are captured later. I mean, this is going to be studied for years.
Do we have a ballpark estimate? Let's just say 70 million Americans get infected, which I think is a very conservative amount, right? Or not infected, exposed, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, exposed. And then of those, how much percent of that, do you have a ballpark estimate?
Not really, no. Every virus is different. Respiratory viruses in general, the exposure rate for respiratory viruses is much higher than other types, generally speaking. Influenza is off the charts, and maybe this is a good time to compare this to influenza. Y'all heard of flu, right? Influenza?
Yeah.
Influenza kills about 500,000 people every single year. In the United States this year so far, 20,000 people, Americans, have died from influenza. And that's a typical year, maybe a little on the low side. So I just want to put that in perspective with, here's this chart here, which is kind of helpful. Talk about morbidity and mortality rates again. This breaks it down a little bit. You see, and again, it's a big box because it's an estimate. It'll take some time to crunch all the numbers and get it down because it is a novel virus, new to humans. Novel means not necessarily new. It's been around who knows how long, but it's been in bats, right? And now people got it, so it's new to our species. So it'll take a while to tease it out, but so far the data shows it's right down there with rotavirus. It's below the first strain of SARS. You know the actual name of this virus is SARS-CoV-2. This is the second strain of SARS. Coronavirus is kind of like saying spider, okay? There are thousands and thousands of species of spider. There are thousands and thousands of strains of coronavirus. So this particular strain is new to us. It's so similar to SARS that they actually named it SARS-2. What other questions do you have? I know you got some, Steve.
Well, I like this right. Yeah, I do. I've got plenty. So this right here is 56 people die a day, and I don't know how old this chart is. Okay, so 9th of March, and the exposure rate or infection rate is doubling about every 3 days. So can we expect the death rate to double every 3 days too? Is that a function of the infection rate?
Possibly, not necessarily. It's so variable by country. I mean, it looks pretty bad in our country, but remember, one of the first populations that got hit was a nursing home, right?
Was what?
A nursing home
in
Seattle. Yeah, I mean, that's a very susceptible population.
Right,
so,
it's disproportionate, right?
Right, yeah, it's disproportionate. It's too early to tell. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. It's too early to tell. But later, I'll start to explain why I'm not scared. There's lots of different reasons for that. But right now, to give you definitive answers and projections is probably would be foolish on my part, if that makes sense.
What's the primary mode of transmission of this SARS?
Primarily aerosol, close personal contact with somebody who's actually shedding virus. I won't say getting sick, but as I'm sure you've all heard, you can shed the virus before you actually get sick. That's true of darn near every disease, so that's not too shocking. Flu is the same way. You can spread flu without actually being sick. So don't let that scare you.
So is it really airborne or just aerosol?
Yes, aerosol implies airborne. So there's, aerosol means it actually hangs in the air in a particle that's about 5 microns or less. Very, very, very tiny. 1 micron is, it takes 1,000 microns to get 1 ml, so it's very, very tiny. And that kind of floats in the air. And so back up a step, you've all heard the study that says it survives on surfaces for 9 days, right? That's not true. And I know that because I got a note, an email from somebody who studies this stuff at USAMRIID. It's the Department of Defense Infectious Disease Laboratory. The article is still under peer review, so you won't see it in the news for a while, but they're going to start pushing the message. This doesn't last for 9 days. In their studies, it's up to 3 days. And I could bore you for 2 hours of why that 9-day study is wrong and how they got to that conclusion. Real quick, they used 100 times the titer level you would expect in a sneeze, and they used 5 times the substrate, which is the stuff they put it in to put it on the surface. So obviously vastly overestimated the viral load on that surface to get it to last for 9 days. Look, if I fill this room full of virus and I keep the temperature and humidity right, you can come back months, maybe even years, and find some, right? So it very much depends on how much virus is there and what is growing on, what it's living on. So that's a 2-second version of why that 9-day study is highly flawed.
I have another question. So now that we know that some of the metrics that have been pushing are not accurate, what about the 15% death rate for people 80 years and above if they get infected? Is that accurate too, or do you think is that misleading? Is that much lower?
No, I think that's accurate.
I'm sorry, it is 50%. So about 1 in 7 chance.
If you actually get it and
if you're
get
80
sick,
years and above, yes. Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have 1 in 7 chance of the whole population dying.
No, just 80 and above.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I want to stress, this virus, like every other virus, most people are just naturally, immune is the wrong word for it, okay? I was talking to Pastor Martin about this yesterday, and he actually came up with a better analogy than I probably could have. The virus, you've seen pictures of the coronavirus, right? With all those little nodules and stuff on it. Those are actually how do you say, connection surfaces, the contact surfaces. Those little nodules is what attaches to your body cell to infect you, okay? Imagine if it, whatever shape, square, right? And your attachment sites are round, and then that is such a minor comparison. I mean, it is mind-bogglingly complicated how a virus attaches to a cell, I'm just going to say that. But each individual has different little surface receptor sites that those viruses attach to. That most of us, that virus can't even attach to just because of how we are, our own individual genetic makeup. So it doesn't matter how much virus you breathe in or exposed to, those individuals are not going to get sick, period. And I don't know if so the Spanish flu outbreak in 1918 infected 1 person out of every 6 people alive on the planet at that time. Very, very virulent, very, most people, a lot of people, and even, well, I won't say most because it's 1 out of 6, right? It's still 1 out of 6 and not everybody. But that's considered one of the most virulent pandemics ever, and we're nowhere near that scale.
I believe that actually targeted younger people, didn't it, or able-bodied people?
Yes, yeah. That was a universal killer. I mean, it didn't matter how old you were if you got it, your chances of dying were pretty high.
How many people died on that? I know it was in the millions. I know we're not the Spanish flu. I know this is nowhere near the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
It was in the millions, I remember.
Yeah, it was. Maybe even hundreds of millions. I don't.
Yeah, it was.
Trying to remember. Yeah, but that's Spanish flu. That's not coronavirus.
Yeah.
But I mean, even those early indications are, in my opinion, as an epidemiologist looking at the curves, I'm okay. As far as pandemics go, this isn't that bad.
Can you explain what an epidemiologist is? I don't know what that is. I don't know if
So epidemiology means the study of disease spread through a population. So this one, I don't know if anybody knows, but there are about 150,000 people die every single day. 150,000 people every single day die of something, okay? So this is just a lying fraction of that big number because, out of the 150,000, about 100,000 people die of quote-unquote age-related factors. And so basically what that means, if you're over the age of 80 and you die, you're probably going to be lumped in that age-related factor thing, unless it was like an accident or murder or suicide or something like that. It's not age-related, right? So if you have right there, if you have a comorbidity, meaning like immune deficiency or cancer or some reason that you can't fight off a virus very well, especially in the age population, and you get coronavirus and you die, probably going to be lumped in that age-related mortality. Just for information.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to ask, so everyone's like freaking out and like clearing all the things out of the shelves and just going like mental. So I'm like, what do you advise we do? Like what do you advise? Do we? I know it's not as like serious as other diseases. Like what do you just expect us to do on a daily basis? We just like
live your life.
Live your life, yeah. That's.
It's not a natural disaster, right? I mean, we're not wiping out cities and buildings and stuff. Yeah. Most people, darn near everybody's still going to work. They're still making stuff. Paper and toilet paper, whatever. Food's not going to stop growing. This is not wiping out our food supply. It's not in our animal population.
Amen.
So
that's true.
Go to work and keep making stuff so we can buy it. I mean, Walmart got wiped out on the shelves. Guess what? You go on Monday, they're going to be restocked.
That's right.
Do you think more people should just maybe just be conscious in general about their hygiene and like washing their hands?
Oh, I got you. So yeah, that's a good question. What can people do to protect themselves from? Okay, excellent question. Number one thing, maintain that 1 meter distance between people who are showing signs. Love you, Jill. I still, I believe you as allergies, but somebody who you don't know, if they're sniffle and sneeze and whatever, just keep that 1 meter distance and limit your contact with them in general. And wash your hands. Wash your hands, wash your hands. This virus is not absorbed through your skin, okay? It is not absorbed through your skin. So wearing gloves, no, it's not absorbed through your skin. I will say it's theoretically possible to touch a surface and touch your nose and get sick. But there has not been a documented case where that's actually happened. Long story why. So let's just go with it's possible. It's possible to touch a surface and get sick. But if you touch the surface and wash your hands and touch your face, you're not going to get it because 2 reasons. Number one, that virus, skin is very toxic to viruses. Viruses do not live on skin very well. It's designed pretty darn well, right? So, and number 2, the transfer, however much virus, nobody really knows, but however much is on the surface, you touch it, we don't know how much actually gets on your skin, and then when you touch your nose, how much actually gets on your nose. But if you wash your hands, we know that it reduces to the level where you're probably not going to infect yourself, so wash your hands.
So 1 meter distance being about 3 feet.
About 3 feet. Yeah. And the CDC doubles it and says 6 feet. WHO says 1 meter. Yeah. And that leads me in, so you see the projections, right? And some of the projections I've seen are based on the cruise ship that were docked at Japan. I got a real problem with that because that is a truly isolated population and they're sharing the same air because right, lots of problems with that. I think other projections are comparing to like South Korea and China. My issue with that in the United States is 2 reasons. Number 1, population density. It's a respiratory virus. The more people in a more confined space, the more people are going to get sick in general. So Korea especially, they love their high-rise apartments. A lot more people live in apartments in Korea than in houses. And there's a whole lot more people per square mile compared to the United States. So then, transposing this to the United States, I would expect the spread rate to be slower and less people get sick. Number 2 is also just cultural norms, and I'm applying this to Italy. If you've ever been to Italy or European culture in general, they tend to stand much closer when they talk to each other. A lot of touching involved. At times greet each other with a kiss, right? Kind of helps spreading the virus person to person. Whereas in the United States, we're kind of standoffish. Hi, how are you doing? And then we get just a natural 3 meter distance just to talk to each other. So very, very different culturally. So, yeah.
If you get it, is it the same protocol if you got any other virus?
What do you mean saying
Like
protocol?
if you happen to catch COVID, do you just wait it out? Nothing special in how
No treatment, no treatment, no cure, because it's a virus. Vast majority of people, very mild symptoms, and they'll just recover as normally. If you're just like flu, if you need to go to the hospital, they will treat you. They'll probably wear protective equipment as well, but IV fluids, it's called palliative care, meaning it's not a treatment, but we're just keeping you hydrated and whatnot so that your body can naturally fight off the disease.
Sorry, going to. So question on this slide right here. So that's the one I'm concerned about. You see Italy, the 3rd one from the top, 5% fatality rate. I know it varies, 1.4 or whatever. So does that mean, so Italy, that's a little bit older. Italy is a little over 20,000.
I think it's actually dropped a little bit since then.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So Italy's about, so does that mean, so 5% of that 7,000 is who died? Obviously it's concentrated in people with asthma or diabetes or 70 and older.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it stopped in China, right? Supposedly. I know a lot of people don't trust the Chinese numbers because of their history of misinformation, but it looks like it kind of contained. South Korea, I heard, has.
They're under the microscope right now. It's going to be pretty hard to.
Are they? Okay, cool. Okay. So it is pretty, so you think it's pretty accurate?
I feel good about the numbers, especially looking into South Korea. As I said, that was 7,400. I think South Korea is just over 8,000 now, and that was 9 March. Today is so it's definitely slowing down.
So question, why do you think South Korea's death rate is significantly lower than Italy's death rate?
Oh, that's speculation. I don't know. Like I said, this is going to be studied for decades. This is, as an epidemiologist, this is pretty fascinating. This is unprecedented. We used to talk about this in hypothetical in lecture, like, we know it's going to happen. We don't know when. We don't know. I mean, it was always based on flu. darn near every model that we had, every discussion was based around the next influenza pandemic, because that's the big one. That's what scares me, not this.
Right. It could be like, like the Spanish flu, are you saying, kind of type of pandemic?
Yeah, another new flu is
I'm convinced the
a
economists,
strain of flu.
I'm convinced the economists will be studying this for the next over 100 years, too.
Oh,
The market
absolutely.
effects of this, I think that's unprecedented as well.
Yes.
Again, because I want us to be on the South Korea side, minimizing death rate as low as possible. I'm just curious what they're doing.
There was a question over here.
Yeah, Frank had a question.
Well,
What about Mexico? How come they're not infected? I mean, it used to be like USA. I would be like Mexico, zero.
Zero?
Yeah, there's no viruses in Mexico.
None that they're talking about.
How come?
well, two possible answers. Number one, they're not testing. You'll always be zero if you never test. So that's a possibility, I'm just saying. Number
There's
two,
no panic and there's toilet paper over there.
Make sure you get your toilet paper done.
we live here in Irving. We'll get a little off topic, but that's okay, right? We live in Irving. Marla went to Aldi's yesterday. Shelves were cleared out. A lot of stuff was hard to find, so she went to Fiesta Mart.
Yeah!
Shelves were Latinos are not scared.
Cost plus.
We went to Cosmo.
Crystal? Crystal has a question.
Crystal, I'm sorry.
Is it true that won't the virus die out in the heat though? Like won't it just
Question is, will the virus die out in the heat? So, influenza is cyclic, right? And I'm basing a lot on influenza because it's very similar to a respiratory virus. It's a encapsulated RNA virus, which is similar to meat. That just means it's very similar to flu in some characteristics. Those types of viruses are very weak. They mutate very rapidly, but they're very weak and don't survive very long. They can die with ultraviolet light. Influenza, we know, cycles every year. We call it the flu season. It doesn't, quote unquote, die out in the summer, but the number of cases drop off very drastically. I expect that to happen with this. I do. But again, nobody really knows.
I just wanted to ask.
So I would guess like 85%, 90% chance that it'll drop off significantly by summer, but nobody really knows.
I want to answer one last question.
Okay.
Go ahead. Church.
Vaccine production, is there a possibility for that right now?
Oh yeah, definitely. Vaccines are very hard to make. It'll take time. Back in January when people were first talking about it, I said, and this was just me saying, I think it'll be about a year before we get a vaccine out of this. It sounds like it's possible it might come faster just because they're skipping some of the stuff that's built in, to ensure safety for better, some of the testing steps. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
Afterwards, I'm glad to ask. We talk about this. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. If you have any questions, please have him an answer. Do talk to him. He likes to talk about this. This is his job. So feel free to